Blow it out your ass.
Doom Eternal. After all of my complaints about how FPS games have lost their sense of scale and power fantasies have evaporated in modern shooters, Doom Eternal showed it can still be done and can still blow your mind. Doom 2016 showed us that Doom can always be cool, that movement and action are number one, and Eternal just leveled that up another 5 times. I took about 25 hours to play the main campaign and try a little multiplayer, and it had 2 fantastic expansions that I'm only just finally diving into after beating the game on release weekend back in 2020. The amount of polish in this game, while still trying to offer some sense of modernity with skins and online play, both in Battle Mode 2.0 and a Horde mode, is absolutely killer. If you like great first-person shooters and slaying some demons, you cannot let another year go by without playing Doom Eternal. Lunistice. We spent so long with everyone embracing pixel art SNES-inspired graphics, the trend has finally moved up to early 3D graphics. Lunistice brings back the PS1 or Sega Saturn era visuals for a refreshing 3D platforming experience with the rhythm and speed of Sonic, except I can actually manage to make it through the levels, most of the time. The difficulty builds up gradually, most of the time, through the levels, and the game gives you room to try again and again and again to find your way through the levels. It can be punishing with checkpoints sometimes, but the rewarding feeling when you get it is not easily matched by other games. The music is wonderful too. A must-play from the past few years, this indie title is a shorter game, but one that can be regularly had for under $5 on Steam sales. A great price. It's worth every penny. Returnal. I'll say it, Housemarque doesn't miss. I loved their twin-stick shooters in the past. Super Stardust HD and Dead Nation were regular time passers on my PlayStation 3 in high school, and Resogun was the first PS4 game I played at a buddy's house. Taking that formula, tweaking it to a third-person bullet hell with photorealistic visuals, creepy horror sci-fi themes, and incredible set pieces, I was there day one on my PS5, and I still come back to this game often. It's a great challenge when you've grown tired of everything else. Mullet MadJack. I'm still mad that I had to randomly stumble upon this game this past summer, instead of like everyone sending this to me like crazy. This is an FPS roguelike that absolutely drips with style. References to 80s action movies, 90s cheese, and classic anime pour out of every sentence you hear or read and every image your eyeballs ingest. Flow is king here, and this addicting game definitely held the top of my favorites for playtime this summer. An easy addicting game you can jump in and out of easily, doesn't try to strip mine your wallet, and runs on Steam Deck. Here you can see how great of a time you can have while you lose 2 hours of your life in one blink of an eye. Astro Bot, the most gamey game to have ever gamed in recent years. This game showed that the PlayStation 5 is capable of playing traditional video games, and not just slot machines or walking simulators. Astro Bot caused an online controversy of sorts, not because of its politics or dev hot takes, but because it was basically causing existential crises in gamers who finally felt like a kid again when playing a video game for the first time in a long time. One of the few exclusives making the PS5 actually compelling for someone to own and play on, this little game shows just how great games can be. Marvel's Midnight Suns. While completely unappealing during my original glance at it, Midnight Suns might be the closest to a BioWare RPG anyone's gotten in recent years, including from BioWare itself. You've got a fun turn-based RPG with all kinds of Marvel characters and interactions. Fight Hydra and supernatural villains, level up your heroes, and form personal relationships. I've yet to finish Midnight Suns, but every time I sit down and play, I just don't want to put it down. Nexus Mods is loaded with mods for this game too. I've typically played on my Steam Deck where it has to run quite pared down, but for this video I played it maxed out on my RTX 4090, outputting to my 48-inch OLED at 4K 120 with the graphics maxed out, and this game can look quite nice. There's a little cheese, but it's a great choice if you've been wanting something different from superhero games lately. Coromon. As a lifelong fan of Pokemon, it's hard to get invested in the various other Mon games over the years, but Coromon is the first one that has actually gotten me pretty far into the game. It's got great 2D pixel art graphics akin to older Pokemon games, some pretty interesting creature designs, great music, and the combat can be quite challenging. It's a great stand-in until Game Freak gets their act together. Baldur's Gate 3. Never has a game, the studio that made it, nor the community around it been such a shining example of just how great games are. A complete game developed for gamers to enjoy, with hundreds of hours of gameplay, online co-op, completely adaptable to many different playstyles. No paid DLC or microtransactions or ulterior motives. The studio just wants you to play the game and enjoy it. BG3 reeks of polish at every corner, from incredible performances to beautiful graphics and stellar gameplay. The community has developed an endless supply of mods, adding everything from new classes, races, hairstyles, to expanding the level cap up to 20, letting you take your whole party with you. More than I could possibly list in one video. Plus, Larian Studios has embraced modding to the highest caliber, with official mod support for PC and console, modding tools, and even curating mods in-game and on their own YouTube channel. The game has received multiple thorough patches, which often could qualify as a whole expansion on their own, with the latest adding crossplay, a photo mode, and 12 entire new subclasses coming up. There's nothing greater than this threequel trip to Baldur's Gate. Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon. Turns out From Software is still capable of making something outside of the Souls genre. Armored Core 6 shows us that they've still got it, and that the classic PlayStation 2 era mech combat genre can still be amazing today, with a complete package game delivered up front. If you like robots, shooting, or have nostalgia for the old Armored Core days, AC6 is a great contender for the best modern mech game. Elden Ring. If you do like the block, parry, strike, dodge, rinse, repeat gameplay of the Souls games, From Software has one of those for you too. Elden Ring and its more recent DLC expansion, The Shadow of Erdtree, will have you breaking your controller in no time while getting you immersed in the wonderful fantasy lore these games are known for. A campfire sounds pretty great now that it's cold all the time.
Hey, I just wanted to pop in for a second and offer a alternative method to enjoy Elden Ring. It's called the Seamless Co-op mod. I'm sure some people out there have heard of it before, but if you haven't, it is a way to play Elden Ring entirely in co-op from start to finish. You can play with up to 6 players, and yes, it does have some impact on the difficulty of the game, but it's not so great that it ruins the experience of the game. And there's also things built into the mod that enable you to make the difficulty scale with the party size. So if difficulty does matter to you in this sense, you can adjust that accordingly. But I just wanted to pop in and say this is an excellent way to experience Elden Ring, even for the first time. I played through Elden Ring entirely in co-op for the first time before I went back and tried it by myself, and I had a great time. So just pitching that to you. Back to you, Adam.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Splintered Fate. Honestly, a roguelike seems like the perfect formula for a TMNT game. I originally discovered this on iOS through Apple Arcade and bought it the moment I found out it was on Steam, and I could play it on my Steam Deck. The game doesn't want too much from you, gets right into the action, and provides some of the closest Hades-like roguelike addictiveness I've had in a long time. It's a great time passer, regardless of which platform you grab it on. Cyberpunk 2077. The launch of Cyberpunk was a pretty big train wreck, but after the 2.0 revamp and Phantom Liberty expansion, the game is an absolute must-play if you have any interest in cyberpunk culture, RPGs, or shooting. Take out bad dudes, dodge the police, hack some military tech, upgrade your cybernetic enhancements, flirt with hot people, and ride and shoot to your heart's content, all in a neon and hologram-clad wonderland. This game has immersed me more than any game I have played in recent months, and it's beautiful to boot. Walking around the streets of Night City will always feel great. To make it more great, pair it with our new backing track album. The Synth Rock Expansion Pack Volume 3 is heavily inspired by rides through Night City and fulfilling our Netrunner fantasies. This album absolutely rules and is safe to use in your videos and streams. Stream or download for free at backingtrack.gg. Vampire Survivors. Never before have I ignored a game because too many people wouldn't shut up about it, assuming it couldn't possibly be that worth talking about, only then to turn around and absolutely lose myself in it. A bullet hell roguelike with a blatant Castlevania inspiration, and now a full Castlevania DLC pack, cheaper than a cheeseburger, is a recipe for bloodshot eyes and random spikes of cravings to keep slaying more vampires during your workday. The perfect Steam Deck game, Vampire Survivors, is a great game to feed your dopamine addiction, even when you can't engage with more meaningful story games. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Will, take it away.
If you had told me that when I was a kid, that in 2024, we would have not one, but 2 Dragon Ball games, both aiming to not just replicate the show in real time, but also make them playable, I probably would have laughed in your face. Which is not to say that we haven't had good Dragon Ball games before, but there really hasn't been anything like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero until now. On the one side, you have a game with such incredible depth that it can easily stand side by side with other titans in the fighting game industry. A game that demands your attention and dedication, and if you give it to it, it will reward you with gameplay that could very easily pass for a lost episode of the show. That game is Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Now on the other side, we have a genuine love letter to the fans, not just of Dragon Ball Z, but from Dragon Ball to Daima. That's been Dragon Ball Z Kakarot's pitch from the start. Make the show playable. It's not just beautifully animated cutscenes either. We've had those before. It is the commitment to placing the player in the world of Dragon Ball, letting the player experience everything from the smaller moments like fishing with Gohan, to the big moments like absolutely bodying Frieza after he kills Krillin on Namek. And not content to just adapt things like the Z Saga like many other games have before. Since the game's release in 2020, the developers have released DLC updates adapting arcs from Dragon Ball, Oob's introduction at the end of Z, Dragon Ball Super, Bardock, and as mentioned, we're about to get DLC for the newly released Dragon Ball Daima. Yes, you heard that right. A 4-plus-year-old game is getting a brand new story DLC adapting a show that just came out weeks ago. This really is the best time to be a Dragon Ball fan. And if you're a new fan just looking for some good games, well, here's 2 absolutely great ones.
No Man's Sky. This game released a fair bit before the 5-year cutoff I'm focusing on here, but the past few years have seen such a massive overhaul of this game and a real kind of over-delivery for post-launch support of a game at all, that it's certainly one of the best comeback stories in all of gaming. It might as well have re-released in recent years. Definitely a great example how even a not great game can be turned around if the studio is given the space to do it right and make it great. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. It's about time we recognize how great it is that a classic-style Crash Bandicoot game can still do well in the modern era. It may not feel quite as at home as the Insane trilogy does, but it's still a great entry and continues the gamey game for gamers feeling that Astro Bot shares. Toys for Bob does great stuff on these modern retro games, and I hope their new independence and partnership with Xbox can lead to more of these or more Spyro games. Both are great games that need to keep releasing for decades to come. There are a lot of clones, scrapped games, server shutdowns, and games that feature the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse these days. But there's also a ton of great games released every year. Some have argued that 2023 was one of the best years we've had in gaming in a long time. This is but a small sample of great games released in the past 5 years, which together could easily last you into the next 5 years if you're someone with responsibilities or a life or can't play 24/7. Plus, there's more that have only just entered early access, and even more that I'm excited for that haven't come out yet. This list only included fully released games. It's easy to get lost in the sauce of social media doomerism, but if you spend more time playing games and less time listening to what crusty edgelords think about the politics or the devs of the game, you'll see we have tons of great games to play and countless hours of fun and immersion to be had. And that isn't changing anytime soon. Let me know if you want me to showcase more. For more discussions of great games and the challenges facing modern games, check out the Dualcom podcast I host with BBK Dragoon. And remember to be kind, rewind.